Hey everyone, this patch was much bigger and it definitely shook a few things up. So we're going to go over to Korea, check it out and see what they've got cooking for us. This might be the first time as well that we actually have a few ADCs in here that seem good outside of Lucian and Ezreal as well. So grab a cup of tea, maybe a biscuit if you're feeling spicy, but let's get into our first pick, which is Vayne. She had crazy buffs this patch. Everybody knew it was going to be nuts anyway, but next patch, a new prestige Vayne skin comes out. So I think we all know why. At least in Korea, she is now one of the best AD carries in the game, unless you can end before 25 minutes, which is where Lucian really comes in. The buffs didn't help her lane really at all, but after that, it's bonkers. The build is similar, the runes are similar and stuff, so that's not interesting enough for a video like this. What is, though, is now with the buffs, Vayne is being played mid, but a ton top lane as well. Top lane, it's a good counter to melee matchups. She can poke from range, harass them, get a decent lead, and then she scales, obviously, because Vayne. It's with kleptomancy as well, though, so you get a ton of gold. If you remember, I did a video on this ages ago. It works now because it has 2 charges, right? And you can use both of those with a single Q. You auto attack to start, and if you press Q before that auto attack lands, it will still use a klepto proc, and the tumble afterwards will use the second one. So you effectively get 2 procs with 1 tumble. You get rich, you stack NSC versus melee who can't stop you, and it's amazing. You're still Vayne though, and if you mess up, these bruises will bend you right over, but focus on the kleptomancy and you should be perfectly fine. If we move into the bot lane though, apart from Vayne, the most noticeable change is going to be to Jinx, who is now just behind Lucian. She's kind of like a Caitlyn at the moment. Not bad early because of her storm rate synergy with her rockets and resets, but then struggles a little bit and pops off again at like 3+ items. She had a buff in 9.1 where her W scales with attack speed now, including from her Q minigun as well. So late game, you can actually use the ability. It sounds very weird, but you stun yourself to use it. You stood in place, right? You couldn't move. And then that's all time you can't auto attack either, so it wasn't worth it. Now you can have some serious damage on that though, and probably the bigger thing is a slow from it to kite people. It should actually make it overall harder to dodge as well, which could help chasing people down. But matchup wise in Korea, like she has a positive win rate against everything now except Misfortune and Draven, who are too good early. Fleet Footwork is taken a lot as the keystone. You can run lethal tempo if you want to, but you don't need to, and celerity isn't bad on her either. But to be fair, absolute focus, one next to it, is one of the strongest base runes in the game at the moment, so most people go for that. This change kind of flew under the radar a bit. Like, it's a bit of a weird change. You weren't sure how good it was going to be. Vayne came in this patch obviously as well, but she seems so much better than before now. So we mentioned Vlad a little bit in 8.2 4B, but there is a new build flowing around that is absolutely insane. You know, we had like Proto Belt into Spellbinder or Zhonya's, right? That was kind of like the move speed, go faster build. Well, now it's Proto into Death Cap. It just straight up shouldn't really work as a second item. It's like an Infinity Edge rushing that. It just doesn't really make sense, but it does work, and Vlad is dominating with this setup. He's one of the most played top laners right now, a bit mid lane as well, still winning a ton and way more if you use his specific build. These stats aren't everything. They don't tell the entire story, but in Korea from this patch, if you take Death Cap second, you win 61% of the time after that. If you went Zhonya's, it is 51%. There's obviously more to it than just that, but it gives you a rough idea of how good this can be. The build is now also Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak, Transcendence, Gathering Storm, with more CDR from your stat shards and also Cosmic Insight on your secondary inspiration. Basically, your runes are your utility. They're your move speed, they're your cooldown reduction that you really need, and your items are just straight up damage rush now. It's kind of like we flipped it around, I guess. Like, Vlad is in a bit of a weird spot. Like, he's not crazy strong as a champion on his own, but he is crazy strong when you put all of this stuff together with him. So if we go into the jungle, Vi is not really that popular anywhere right now, but she's made a definite comeback in Season 9. There are 2 ways you can go. So first up is just straight up assassin, one shot with electrocute, or you can abuse shield bash and you can go aftershock and be a little bit more tanky. Vi has a ton of damage built into her kit, and she basically is an assassin without the name tag, but she's also very unreliable, and if you want an assassin, you might as well just pick up a Kha'Zix. When you dive in with Vi, you're 100% in there, and you're not coming back out until you killed everybody or you're dead. But back when we had like Courage of the Colossus as the keystone, if you remember that, she was amazing because it let her survive. She'd have this big shield when she dove in, and she wouldn't instantly die. Now with Aftershock, she can do something kind of similar. It gives more time for the team to follow up, which is really important. It makes you survive a bit longer, and you do get a ton of damage from your Trinity Force, your Sterix anyway. The other side of this kind of setup is your Shield Bash, which got a buff as well this patch at the same time. It works with your passive. It makes you tankier, so you take less damage in the jungle and in fights as well, but it also gives your first smash a bit of a damage boost. Vi is seriously good right now at like 3+ items when she starts to get a little bit tankier, and she can survive as she engages as well. The problem is she's like mega squishy early, which means you have no room for error. She's not bad early game, but it's just a lot easier to die. Whenever I stream right now, the pick I get asked about the most is, what do you think of Cassio bot lane? This is something a ton, and I mean a ton of pros abuse right now because it is seriously strong. QMax Arcane Comet Cassio got hit with nerfs a few patches ago. She's still good, but her damage is insane, and it can easily abuse ADCs, and that is why they've kind of moved that into the bot lane. You don't actually have to get too close when you're maxing your Q. Like, it provides a wave clear, but more important, it kind of provides constant poke damage, and it outranges most of their auto attacks. You almost always run a Ludens first now to give you damage earlier into the game, a bit more burst instead of scaling with Archangels. Basically, you're powering up a bit faster than the ADC and be able to do more damage than them. If you aren't sure about why we're taking Arcane Comet on Cassio, it's because of the cooldown reduction part underneath it. When it's on cooldown, any spells you hit instead reduce the remaining cooldown. Single target like your E reduced it by 20%, but it's actually your poison really 5% per tick, which when you're spamming those all together means you're firing out comments all the time. This is way better when you play more aggressive bot lane, like poke and bully them with Qs from range rather than just sitting back and trying to scale up. Like, you want to abuse when you're stronger than the AD. Now, Karthus jungle is also something we've seen a lot of pros abusing. It's kind of leaking into solo queue. I think it was even in the Kesper Cup recently as well. This patch, because of that, probably more people are playing it, having no idea what to do and making it look a little bit worse, but it is still proper strong. Dark Harvest Karthus is nuts anyway. Everybody knows that. You've probably all felt it in your games. The extra damage is really good, and it's kind of like a better Predator, I guess, than we had like last season. You've got your Ultimate Hunter and your Presence of Mind to ult a bit more, and then it packs a big old punch when you do use it because all of your items are stacking damage. Basically, though, his clearing is really good. He power farms like mad. That is what he brings to the table, kind of like a Master Yi really. He doesn't even gank that badly, but his ganks are global. As weird as that sounds, if a lane is fighting and it's kind of close, he can just use his ultimate and add an extra chunk of damage, right? Like, he doesn't even have to walk into lane with his wall. He can do, and that's not bad, but he doesn't even have to. One of the biggest things that you can also tell from like websites and stuff is that he gets way more golden experience per minute than basically any other jungler, pretty much because he farms so well, and that is how he gets his lead. It means that he outscales a lot of champions right now that want to try and cheese and get a few early kills, get their red buff, and then gank level 2, right? Those are a lot of popular champions right now, and Karthus just gets better as the game goes on. Fiddlesticks is the biggest support change from Korea in 9.1. Honestly, there wasn't really a massive shakeup, so that's why we didn't look at anything earlier. It's kind of towards the end of the video. He's one of the best early to mid game supports now, if you want to think of it like that, whereas early ultimates and fears can kind of be game changing. He also roams really well because they, of course, they build Moby boost, but he also has his ultimate, right, with Moby to jump in with the speed and everything, and a point and click crowd control with his fear. His poke does some decent damage in the lane phase, but that's not really our focus. Like, it's good, right, but the science is really strong as well. We're not taking Avery, we're taking Aftershock again with a couple of choices as well. Font of Life is a little bit new from the last time we saw Aftershock. It's healing your AD or anybody else actually who hits the target after the fear. It's also unflinching, so you gain tenacity and slow resist after using a summoner like your flash to engage with your ultimate. Also, you get some more when they're on cooldown, and you're probably going to be flashing every single time it's up because that is exactly what Fiddle does, right? You get a free stopwatch, the cooldown reduction from your runes as well. It's a really good mix between like damage and engage. He's also still an amazing counter to Morgana. By the way, if you hate that champion, pick Fiddle. Like, his E is instant cast, it removes the black shield straight away, and that is why he like kind of first came into the meta a while ago anyway. All right, so mid lane isn't really changing that much. It will in 9.2, but not for now, which means I've left it till last this time. It's purely because of this guy as well, Galio. He's the most played champion mid. He has basically the highest win rate and the second highest ban rate in the entire game. His wave clear is bonkers right now. If you played against it, you'll know exactly what I mean. He can fire his Q out, clear, and then roam around with his ultimate, meaning it doesn't even matter that he's melee. He farms like fine. You've also got the shield passive, which makes it even harder to play against him. It's really difficult to poke him down or harass him or fight him, and if you spend mana fighting him, he'll push you under tower. His damage is still amazing though, way too high really. His ultimate does a massive amount of burst, but it's his Q. It's so easy to hit and he chunks every single time. Aftershock makes it even hard to kill him when he dives in and he procs it, but it actually is like shield bash. He works with his passive, right? So while that is up, which is pretty much all the time, he takes less damage and he does more damage on the first auto attack as well. Bone plating makes it even harder. Overgrowth actually was buffed for non-tank champions, so he gains even more health now and he gets more tanky throughout the game. Honestly, everything is really good for him. Like, it's perfect. He is so strong, and that is really difficult for any other champion to look half decent next to him. The one that I have found, though, is Vel'Koz. It's one of the best matchups. Lux is also okay, but a bit more standard for us anyway, so not ready for this video. He has pretty low mana cost, though, to match Galio. He can poke from range, he can do true damage, and he can burst as well. Galio does have to get a little bit closer because he is melee, right? Same with a lot of champions, actually, mid lane, and Vel'Koz can knock them up into a full combo to nuke them down, something a lot of mid laners lack. He's also really good against Cassiopeia for exactly the same reason. It's really dangerous to get close to Vel'Koz, and it's almost like a mini game to see how well you can dodge his geometry naturally when you're further away. Leandri's is also amazing on him, and it kind of takes him to another level. It's not picked up a ton, but it's got an even higher win rate than Medjai's when he does get it. The added burn, the added damage ramp up time synergizes so well with this ultimate, so you want to try and work it into your build, maybe third, even earlier, and you'll jump up in power. We do see him more as a support actually, but genuinely in this mid lane meta of like Galio, Cassiopeia, Zoe, really annoying stuff, Vel'Koz can smash each and every one of them. Just don't take him against assassins, or you can, but it's going to be a bit of a hard game. So that is going to wrap up the new picks from Korea today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching until the very end. Make sure you like the video. It does help me out. Thank you very much. Make sure you subscribe as well if you haven't. But for now, I will leave you with the robots.